Keenan Allen has dollar signs in his eyes after the Minnesota Vikings and Justin Jefferson reset the wide receiver market. But negotiations between the Chicago Bears and the 32-year-old wide receiver that's new to the team might be a little more complicated.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lauren Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. You can follow me on Twitter at CoxSports1. You can follow the podcast at Locked On Bears on all of your favorite social media platforms, including the Locked On Bears YouTube channel, where you can keep up with all of our video podcasts as well. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. On the show today, we'll look at how Justin Jefferson's record-setting wide receiver contract resets the market for the Chicago Bears wide receivers. Keenan Allen in the last year of his deal. DJ Moore now almost criminally underpaid at this point. Such a steal for the Bears on his current contract. And eventually that's going to come back around. And it also informs the drafting of Rome Odunze and locking him in on a relatively cheap rookie contract compared to what these top of the market receivers might get, and how this all sort of played into the Bears' decision making here to give them some different options as they move forward with these wide receiver contracts. We'll wrap up with a separate contract discussion about Caleb Williams still needing to sign his rookie deal, as a lot of other rookie deals have come in, and it's a rookie contract, so there's some standard stuff there, but he doesn't have an agent, and this whole process hasn't been super standard for Caleb Williams, so we'll check in on how things are going in that department as well. But it was really the big story of the NFL last week when Justin Jefferson signed his new record-setting contract, $140 million deal with $110 million guaranteed, locking him up in Minnesota for the next, 4 more seasons after this one through 2029. And it's certainly going to tie up a lot of the Vikings cap space. I mean, Justin Jefferson is going to have a $47 million cap number in the last year of that deal. They kept it low for this year, but backloading the heck out of that contract. And so then it shapes the market for every other wide receiver. And a lot of teams are looking, okay, what does that mean for T. Higgins and some of these other guys that are looking for contracts or potential trades right now? But kind of farther down the list of headline players affected by this is Keenan Allen, who comes to the Chicago Bears on the last year of the contract he had signed with the Los Angeles Chargers. The Bears agreed to take on parts of that when they traded for him. It's basically kind of like he's on a 1-year deal now. Technically, it was a much longer contract in the beginning. It was a 4-year, $45 million extension, but that extension was backloaded a little bit. So this year, his cap number with the Bears is $23.1 million, and he's looking for another contract. He's not trying to retire right away or anything like that, but he's also 32. So we know that he's not going to have another 10 years in the NFL, but maybe 5, but then at what level? But he's still playing at a high level. So there's a lot of different moving parts here that make a potential contract negotiation with Keenan Allen complex. It's not quite the same as Justin Jefferson, where that has its own complexities, but young receiver who's at the top of his game, at the top of his market, who's going to get the biggest contract, then it's just kind of finding numbers that work for everybody. But at the end of the day, he was going to become the highest paid wide receiver, and it was just about moving the numbers around to make that something that would fit for everybody. But Keenan Allen would not be the highest paid wide receiver in the NFL, might not be the top 5 highest paid wide receiver in the NFL at age 32. But trying to slot him in is interesting. But as he outlined at mandatory minicamp last week, definitely taking notice of what's going on with Justin Jefferson and keeping the contract discussion certainly, in the back of his mind at the very least.
How much longer do you want to play, and do you have a desire to maybe get an extension here and finish out that time here, or are you at the point in your career you're just taking it one at a time?
It's kind of tough to answer right now, but I'm going to play as long as I can. As far as extension, we would like to play, speak for itself, and if they offer me something that I like, then we'll go from there.
Are you okay with the idea if this is a contract year going out and proving it and looking for that next deal?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the goal right now. Just to go out and do what I always do, and just try to remain who I am. And the market just got reset, so.
So he's open to the right offer if it comes to him, right? If they can find something that pays him enough, right? Like, he's not here to take a hometown discount. This is not his hometown. Like, he wouldn't even take one in LA, so he's not going to come to Chicago for a couple months and say, yeah, I'll take a bunch less money to stay here. But like, what does less money look like, and what is that compared to? Like, the Justin Jefferson contract is the one at the top, but it's not necessarily the most direct comparison point for us. Like, I think it's better to look at some of the older wide receivers that recently got new deals to kind of get a sense of what a market might look like for Keenan Allen. So, for example, Stephon Diggs traded to the Houston Texans and reworked a 1-year, $22.5 million deal for them. Like, that, to me, that kind of sets where, if I'm Keenan Allen and his agent, that kind of is the benchmark there. 31-year-old Stephon Diggs got $22.5 million this year to play for the Texans. So if I'm going to a contract with the Bears, I'm saying, hey, a receiver pretty much 1 year younger than Keenan Allen, okay, but like otherwise right at Keenan Allen's level. Allen had the best season of his career in 2023 in terms of production. That should be where that number starts, right? And you can also look at Mike Evans of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who's also 31. He got a longer deal. I think it was maybe actually just a 2-year deal, but he got a contract extension with the Buccaneers this offseason for roughly $20.5 million a year at age 31. So $2 million less than Stephon Diggs on a per year basis. And to be clear as well, per year average of a contract is not always the best measurement here, because guaranteed money plays a big factor in that. And some players might take less as an average salary in exchange for more guaranteed money. And some players might take less guaranteed money in exchange for more total salary. So there's always wiggle room there, that these aren't the perfect measurements, but it is a little bit more of a standard way we can look at every contract the same as that sort of average salary. So we're looking at 20 to 22 plus $1 million type deal for Keenan Allen. And if you're the Chicago Bears, do you give that to a player before he has played a single snap of football for your team? I mean, it was one thing to do it with Montez Sweat when he's 26, but Keenan Allen is 32, and eventually he's not going to be as physically gifted as he was when he was 25, like Justin Jefferson. And so at some point that's going to start. So what do you need to see before you're willing to give that to him? And then, okay, is it a 2-year deal? You know, how long of a contract would that work? Like, I do think the Mike Evans language feels like something that could work well in terms of how they structured it, right? It was a 2-year, $41 million contract with $29 million guaranteed up front, fully. And then they were able to space out some of that cap hit over void years on the end of it. So they kept his cap number down this year, and then it jumps up again in 2025. And there's not a ton of flexibility for them in that deal. Like, that's them rewarding Mike Evans for a long and productive career in Tampa. But I think something along that kind of value feels like where Keenan Allen might be. Like, a couple of years with some decent guarantees that for sure you're giving him a bunch of guaranteed money up front, and then maybe you build some flexibility in on the back end. But as long as he keeps performing at a 1,000-yard receiver level, that's going to be a $22+ million a year contract. And it kind of works out that he's making 23 now. So it's not like you have to drastically increase his salary. He's just now in the back end of what was a backloaded deal in the past. And so it's not that his cap hit's going to take this big jump up from one year to the next, but it's going to continue to be a significant portion of your salary cap as long as he's here. But you don't want to go like too many years and then have to pay him $20 million in a year if he really starts to drop off, or if heaven forbid, health becomes a concern in terms of durability. So it's messy, but I think the Bears are probably going to play this one out a little bit, see how it goes. I don't know that you're going to save any money by getting a Keenan Allen deal done today as opposed to getting a Keenan Allen deal done after the season, because he just had a great season. So he's not going to have, he can't really go any higher in terms of his current value to the team. And so I think they're going to let him play it out and work it out, next offseason, but engage in these negotiations along the way. Eventually, this wide receiver contract conversation is going to move to DJ Moore, and Rome Odunze is kind of part of the conversation as a rookie right now, and how the Bears allocate their assets at wide receiver. So we'll look big picture at the future of this Bears receiving core in the context of the wide receiver market next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook. Summertime means baseball, the NBA Finals, the Stanley Cup Finals, and more, and you can bet it all on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. So you bet $5 on anything, and if your bet is successful, not only do you get the winnings from your $5 bet, but then they're going to throw an extra $200 in bonus bets right into your account that you can use to bet on everything from the Finals MVP to who's going to hit one out of the park to Caleb Williams' rookie season, Offensive Rookie of the Year odds, passing props, Rome Odunze receiving props, line for Week 1, Bears-Titans as well. Like, there's so many ways you can already get ahead on the football season with FanDuel. So to claim your $200 in bonus bets, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Keenan Allen's contract is the most pressing at the forefront here, but kind of lingering in the background here is DJ Moore's contract. That he's 27, still in the prime of his career, under contract this year and next year, but then after 2025, he'll be a free agent. And right now, I mean, his contract is an absolute steal. The way it was structured in Carolina, the cap hit goes down the last couple of seasons, so he's only costing the Bears $16 million against the salary cap this season. Like, that's a steal for a #1 wide receiver who's got, going to be a 1,000-yard guy through and through. Like, to give you an example, Keenan Allen at $16 million is just behind Cortland Sutton of the Broncos at $17.4, Michael Pittman at $18 million. He's not that far ahead of Alan Lazard of the Jets. Like, this is a really good deal for a wide receiver that is much better than all the players around him on the salary cap, structure right now, the cap hits for this season. But I can't help but wonder, if I'm Keenan Allen, I look at my contract and I'm like, okay, I'm only getting $16 million in this year and $16 million next year, and Justin Jefferson per average is getting double. I mean, his contract average is $35 million a year. I guess Keenan Allen's DJ Moore's contract average is 20, so it's not exactly double, but like his $16 million cap hit this year is half of what Justin Jefferson's cap hit will be in 2026. His cap hit will be $39 million. You know what I mean? Like, could DJ Moore sit there and go, you know what? I'm worth more than $16 million. And I'm not here to suggest that he's going to, hold out or make some sort of big off the field stink, but I wonder if there might be some added urgency to do a contract extension early, right? Again, he's under contract for this season and next season. So I don't think it's something that's necessarily going to happen like between now and Week 1 or something that's going to come up during the regular season. But I would think if I'm DJ Moore and I look at my contract and say, heading into 2025, which will be the last year of his deal, he'll be 28, still in the prime of his career and only making $16.5 million as a cap hit, that you could then add an extension onto that. And that's when we start to get back into Justin Jefferson and the big wide receiver money at the top. Again, DJ Moore, as great as DJ Moore is not Justin Jefferson. DJ Moore is not going to be a $35 million a year wide receiver. But you look around and you see a 26-year-old Jalen Waddle just got a 3-year, $85 million deal from the Dolphins. That averages about $28 million a year. We just saw Nico Collins of the Houston Texans, age 25, get a new 3-year contract extension, $73 million-ish added on top. He's now getting about $24 million a year. And DJ's deal is currently at 20. So like if Waddle is, if Collins is at 24 and Waddle is at 28, a year from now, does DJ Moore come and say, yep, okay, Waddle got 28, I would like 30. 30 would not make him the highest paid wide receiver in the NFL. 30 is what Tyreek Hill just got. 30 is what Amon-Ra St. Brown just got. Like, is DJ Moore in that range? Or AJ Brown is at 32. That's where these wide receivers all of a sudden start to get expensive. And especially when you then combine DJ Moore and Keenan Allen's contract. Like right now, it's pretty affordable because DJ Moore is only down at 16. But if DJ goes from 16 to 30 and Keenan Allen stays around 20, 23, then that's $50 million of your salary cap invested in 2 wide receivers, which you can afford when you have a rookie quarterback, but you're going to have to sacrifice other places. And eventually, Keenan Allen will retire at some point, or he's going to be on a shorter term type deal. So you're not going to be locked into those guys for $50 million for forever. But like that represents 20 some odd percent of your salary cap space. Like that's a lot. Maybe more like 17%, but like more than 15% of your salary cap space in those 2 wide receivers. And like that's where Rome Odunze comes in, right? You have to ask yourself, if you're the Bears, okay, like you can afford that all this year. That's great. You can probably afford it all in 2025. You bring back Keenan Allen and DJ Moore and give them a contract extension. But then at some point you say, well, you've got Rome Odunze, who by year 2 or year 3, you expect to be, one of the better wide receivers in football. Plus you've got DJ Moore, who's still in his prime. Like at that point, it's pretty easy to let Keenan Allen go and say, you know what, it's been a great couple of years, but you're 34, 35 now, and maybe not worth the $23 million a year now. And Rome Odunze is, then he's 24 or whatever, and he's great. And then you've got Moore and Odunze, and not that you don't want Keenan Allen still at that point, but you don't need Keenan Allen at some point. And that's where like the Odunze draft pick gives the Bears so much flexibility, because that rookie wide receiver contract will keep him affordable for really 5 years. I mean, the 5th-year option will be a little bit bigger, but like all things considered, he's going to be really cheap for the type of wide receiver you're expecting to get with the 9th overall pick. And so he gives them the flexibility to move on from Keenan Allen whenever it becomes financially burdensome, and it gives you the flexibility to be able to absorb a bigger contract for DJ Moore when that time comes. You still got a couple years of DJ Moore being really cheap and affordable, and then his deal is going to go way up, but Odunze will still stay cheap for a few more years. And then, you start to get like 5 years down the line when Odunze's contract is coming up, and then, DJ Moore will be 33 at that time, and then, okay, then maybe you move on. That's way farther down the line. But the Bears are staggered nicely, right, where you have older veteran Keenan Allen, right in his prime DJ Moore, and then rookie Rome Odunze, so that as they age, they'll each kind of shift into each other's cycle, like career cycle, where as Keenan Allen ages out of the league or ages out of, being great, DJ Moore will be getting into that Keenan Allen role. And at the same time, Rome Odunze will be getting into that DJ Moore age. And maybe somewhere along the lines, you draft another wide receiver, and you can kind of just keep them all a few years apart, and you can kind of balance the affordability that way and always have a consistent flow of steady wide receiver weapons for your rookie. Well, he won't be a rookie quarterback throughout that, but for your young quarterback on a rookie contract for at least the first 5 years. But then if Caleb Williams is good, then his contract blows up, and then it's harder to afford the receivers, and that's the chess piece. But those are all really great problems to have. If you can get to the point where, oh no, our quarterback is so good and our wide receivers are so good that we're having trouble figuring out how to keep them all, that's a really good problem to have, and one that we have never seen in this city. So I'm certainly not going to be here worried or fretting about getting to that point when it's still many, many years down the line. But it's just something I think, if I'm Ryan Poles, I'm thinking long-term, when the Justin Jefferson deal comes through and raises the market, like, all right, this all sort of fits in the plan, and is why having Rome Odunze is such a great wide receiver insurance policy there, and keeps you on track to keep that pipeline flowing at a really key position for your young quarterback. They still have to agree to a rookie contract with Rome Odunze and Caleb Williams. And I think, rookie quarterback contracts are rookie contracts in general are fairly standard, but sometimes you get some negotiation in there and some holdout in there. And I've kind of been keeping an eye and an ear to what's going on with Caleb Williams, just because he doesn't have an agent, and he just kind of has done things differently throughout the whole pre-draft process. So it wouldn't surprise me if he does things a little differently with the rookie contract, or however that might play out. So we'll hear from him about how he's approaching that process and what that might look like for the Bears this summer, next on Locked On Bears. As always, thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today throughout the summer. If you're ever looking for your second listen, don't forget our Locked On Sports Today 24/7 live streaming channel on YouTube or the Amazon Fire TV channels app. If you're tired of all the argument television on ESPN and Fox Sports, go get your daily sports fix 24 hours a day for free with all the Locked On Podcast Network experts breaking down their teams on the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 feed on the Locked On Sports Today YouTube channel or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. A little bit of a transition from the wide receiver contract situation to another lingering contract situation with Caleb Williams as the number 1 overall pick. Not signed yet. No reason to be concerned about that. It's still very early in the process. There's not really a rush to sign the rookie contract. They're still allowed to participate at OTAs, mandatory minicamp, rookie minicamp, and then now they're still here for another week of the rookies are staying longer than the veterans for a week, and then they'll go off in the summer, and not a big deal. It's really training camp is when it starts to be a little bit more of a bigger deal, and where you see players hey, I'm not going to participate until my rookie contract is signed because you don't have the same kind of protections and all that stuff. So it's not a problem yet. I'm not here to say anything about it being something to be concerned about yet or something to be a red flag or anything, but it's just something that I've been wanting to keep an eye on, given Caleb Williams' general approach to everything in this process has always been done, on his terms and his way, and that's been fine. It hasn't really been a problem in any real way, but I just wonder if things will go differently than normal in the rookie contract negotiations as well. So with Caleb not having an agent, you wonder how that process will go. And so far, it wasn't a problem during the pre-draft process. I don't anticipate that it will be a problem, but it's just different. And that's where I want to keep an eye on it, just in case. I'm not trying to identify a problem that's not there, but I'm trying to make sure that we're, staying attentive to these sort of things. So here's how Caleb described how he's approaching the contract negotiations for the number 1 overall pick.
What do you expect when you get into the process of trying to get a contract done with them, doing it without the agent?
Yeah, I'm not handling that. I've been focused on these past 3 days of mini camp, the OTAs before that, and rookie camp before that. So I haven't been focused on that. Polls and my team has been focused on that. I have lawyers and attorney, to handle things like that, so that I can, be free-minded on the field, enjoying coming into work every day and working my tail off.
I do think generally, Caleb's pretty smart. In general, he's pretty smart, but I don't necessarily feel like you need an agent in this process, especially when it comes to the rookie contract. And when you're going to be the number 1 overall pick, throughout this thing, I don't know that there's a lot he missed out on by not having an agent hired, especially when he has a team that has, attorneys and business people and smart, qualified individuals. There's a little bit of a contrast to I don't know, it's felt in the past, when players have not had agents and sometimes they've had people try and negotiate on their behalf and then get in trouble because they're not NFLPA certified agents. Was that, I don't want to misremember this, but did that what happened with Roquan Smith and so-called Saint Omni, his business manager guy who was contacting other teams about a trade, and the NFL had to put out a release to say, hey, he's not an NFLPA certified agent, do not negotiate with him. Stuff like that feels a little bit less well thought out, or a little bit less stable, a little bit more worrisome. Whereas I think Caleb looks at this and says, okay, the NFL rookie wage scale says the number 1 overall pick is going to make X number of dollars. I don't actually have the exact number in front of me, but you're not negotiating salary here. You're not saying, oh, can we get more money here or less money here? It's not a numbers negotiation for these rookie contracts. And so Caleb knows exactly how much he's going to get paid on this deal. The Bears know how much he's going to cost, and Caleb knows how much he's going to get. That is unquestioned. So why give an agent 3% of that if you already know what the number is? The agent is not going to get you more money, right? That's part of the thought process, right? Is okay, you hire an agent because they are more experienced negotiators. They have relationships with these general managers and with these front office people, and so they can use that to maybe get you more money than an attorney or a business manager or you representing yourself, right? Like that you pay, the agent is worth giving 3% to because they'll earn you more money total, so that even when you subtract the 3%, like you might still be getting more than what you would have gotten trying to negotiate it yourself without an agent. But in this case for Caleb, there's no financial benefit to negotiate here in terms of how much money he's going to go into his pocket. So why give an agent 3% when you could instead have an attorney who's not an agent, but reviews the legal structure of the contract? Like what you're negotiating mostly at this point is things like injury settlements and offset language. So if, there's language in the contract so that if the Bears were to release you, like the offset language is when a player is released and then another team signs that player, offset language dictates that the other team must pay part of the remaining money on the contract that the Bears had released, right? It's a way to protect the team from losing a player and losing all that money and not getting anything back if another team goes and gets that player and the player turns out to be good, right? And you can negotiate what percentage of the guaranteed money on the contract is considered offset money that the other team would have to offset if they signed you. Because if you have a lot of offset money in your contract, then you're less attractive as a free agent because that team not only has to pay you, but also pay your former team, right? So that's something that you can negotiate in a rookie contract and that the two sides will be negotiating. I know there's complicated injury language about, okay, like depending on the type of injury and if an injury forces a retirement, then how much of the money do you get? Like I don't know the legal ins and outs of exactly the minutia of what's negotiated there, but it's all things like that I would think a regular old attorney who you pay a retainer to, but not 3% of the contract, you just pay him. The attorney has a fee that you pay, and it's not tied to the contract that you're signing, unlike an agent where their fees are tied to the contract that you're signing. So if you could pay an attorney to work out the offset language and the injury stuff, it's all just legalese. It's all just sort of legal back and forth, but it's not going to change your salary at all. Like, then why give up your 3% or whatever the percentage is going to be for that agent? So that's where it's like, I'm not like upset by Caleb not having an agent in this process. And I'm not necessarily worried that that's going to cause more problems because he seems to have a very clear head about it. I'm just practicing. We're just going through this. We're not in a rush. It'll take care of itself. We'll be fine. We're not going to get too caught up in this. And if you're the Bears, right, he's the number one overall pick. He's the franchise quarterback. You're all in on Caleb Williams. So I don't think there's really going to be a lot to haggle about there in terms of offset language and stuff, because it's like, it's a little bit like a prenup in a marriage, right? It's like, well, if you really think this is going to work with this quarterback, then why is the offset language so important to you? Why do you got to protect yourself in case this fails? Don't you believe in me and in us that this marriage is going to work between team and quarterback? And like at the end of the day, if Caleb Williams doesn't work for the Bears, they have a lot bigger problems than the offset language, right? They have a lot bigger problems than whatever the injury guarantees were. Like every little thing they'd be negotiating in this contract is so minute compared to everything else. Like Ryan Poles and everybody would be fired. You know what I mean? If it got to the point where any of these negotiations mattered sometime down in the contract because of the offset language or whatever, like everyone is screwed. So I don't think it should be a big thing that both sides should get super hung up on. And we'll probably see Caleb sign sometime right before training camp. And maybe people will wring their hands about it and be all worried for a couple of weeks or something. Like I'm sure it will become a scandal of like, when will Caleb sign his deal? Is Caleb, and it's not really a controversy at all. It's just, there's nothing to talk about. So people are going to make a big deal out of it. Mark my words, as I record this for the June 10th episode of the podcast, at some point, someone will be concerned and write one of these articles of like, what's going on with Caleb's contract? When we, and make it seem as though there's an issue here, and there is not. Until there may become one. It's possible that, my point being that someone will try and ask if there's an issue before we actually know whether or not there's an issue. Someone will make up a controversy about this before there's anything with any sort of evidence of any sort of controversy at all. It's just because there's nothing else to talk about, and he hasn't signed his deal. And I predict he might be the last quarterback to sign his deal. And then all of a sudden, oh no, Caleb's the last quarterback. What's going on? Something's wrong, even though we have no evidence that anything's wrong. Like that's what I think is going to happen, and it's going to be annoying. And I want to call it up ahead of time and say, unless we get a report from Adam Schefter or Ian Rappaport or Jay Glazer or one of the like verified insider people, even Brad Biggs or one of the Chicago, like a verified Chicago media person, unless we get a report that something is amiss in the negotiations, then we don't know that anything is amiss in the negotiations, and we shouldn't get riled up about anything having any kind of problem there. It's all just to wanted to sort of get on the front of it and say, it'll be fine. It hasn't happened yet. It might take longer because Caleb's going to go through it his way, but things will be done, and I don't think we have anything to worry about. So that's where things stand with Caleb Williams' contract, with Keenan Allen's contract, with the future of DJ Moore and Rome Odunze. A lot of contract talk on the podcast today. I hope you learned a little bit of something. Try not to get too bogged down in the individual numbers, but really want to make the process that much more clear. If you learned something, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that subscribe button wherever you listen to the podcast, or if you're following along on the Locked On Bears YouTube channel. That's going to be the best way to keep up with all of our daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you're looking for that second listen, you can check out Locked On Sports Today's 24/7 live YouTube stream. But we'll be back breaking down everything from mandatory minicamp and getting you ready for a little bit of the offseason pause here. But, Locked On Bears does not pause. We slow down a little bit, but we absolutely do not pause. And we'll still be here to give you another opportunity to bear down.